Hi, good Shabbos, everybody. How are you? This week's Parsha is Parshat Va'etchanan, famously referred to as Parshas Nachamu, the week of return. What are we returning from? If you recall, just a week ago, we read Parshat Dvarim. We opened up the last book of Moses, Parshat Dvarim, which is called Deuteronomy. It's the Greek word that was given to it. But it actually means these are the words of Moshe Rabbeinu. These are the words of Moses. We're going to spend an entire book doing a chazara and a review of Moshe Rabbeinu. He asked, and the Netivat Shalom, the Shlomo Rebbe, asked this question. We just finished the three weeks. We're in a state of mourning. The Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. We feel down. We feel we're hard on ourselves. It's unpleasant, and now we're all of a sudden supposed to spring forward. And if you're going to try and motivate someone to spring forward, if you look at what we read last week in Parshat Dvarim, Moshe recounts the 40 years that we were in the Sinai desert, and he points out all the bad things that we did, and all the things that we did wrong, and almost berates us. And somehow, some way, that is supposed to send us a message. And now all of a sudden this week, we're supposed to have this renewed, rejuvenated way in which we're now all of a sudden motivated to return. And if you recall 2 weeks ago when we learned Matos Maseh, we pointed out when we closed the books on the fourth book of Moshe, we pointed out at the time that is when the Teshuva process, the repentance process is supposed to start. It's supposed to start when we are not in a depressed state, but more so in a sedated state, in a state where we're not feeling great, in a state where we're feeling like we've failed. And that's when the Teshuva process is supposed to begin. And we talked about at the time that the way it happens is you start small. You do something called sur meira va'aseh tov. You need to find those things that always hold you back from being a better person, for excelling as a Jew and excelling as a person of faith, and find those things that hold you back, and you have to stand up to them specifically. And when you do finally fight that desire and fight that evil inclination, you have to at the same time spring forward and do something positive. You have to do a good deed. It's a jab and a hook. It's a jab and an uppercut. You stun the Yetzer Hara, and then you hit him hard with something positive that says, I've changed. And we start with that, and now we find ourselves with Moshe Rabbeinu, and he says to us, and I'm going to do a review of all the bad things that you did, and hopefully you'll be able to do this. Now, if you think about it, Moshe Rabbeinu is standing on the banks of the Jordan River about to say goodbye to Klal Yisrael because God told him you're not going with them into Israel. And he's trying to prepare them for a real independent state with a new leader. And hopefully when they cross over the Jordan River without him, they'll be able to endure it. And he has to somehow impose this notion on us. And it's the Shabbos Nachamu, it's Va'etchanan that helps spring us forward and continue this process. And it's a constant battle. And I'd like to share with you what the Netivat Shalom writes. And you'll see that this is very, very deliberate and it's very, very systematic. And here we go. B'Sefer Mishnah Torah ne'amra kol inyanei avodat Hashem. In this book, the fifth book of Moshe, we talk about all of the inyanim, all of the issues and all of the laws of how to worship God. Mitzvat ahavat Hashem v'yirato. We're going to learn about how to love God and to fear Him. Uvot tidbak v'halachta b'drachav. And this is how you will be able to cling to Him and you will be able to follow in His ways. Ubimiuchad, the Parshat Va'etchanan, and specifically in this upcoming Parsha, Shehi Halev Shel Mishnah Torah, that it's the heart of this particular last book, Shektuvim ba Aseret Hadibrot, that we're actually going to read this weekend about the Ten Commandments, the giving of the Ten Commandments. We already learned about it in Parshat Yitro, but we're going to review that. And furthermore, v'chatuv ba hapasuk Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. We're going to say the famous phrase, Hear, O Israel, the Lord is God, the Lord is one. Shehu Yisod HaYahadut, that it is at the core of Judaism. Umekor HaDvekut, and it's at the root of being close to God. V'chol Parshat V'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha v'kulei. And the entire Parsha of V'ahavta. Up until this point, we have been conditioned in a state of fear, in a state of awe. We're afraid. We just saw what could happen to us when we don't pull together and we don't remain close. Kodesh Baruch Hu will leave us. The house that he inhabited on this earth, the Beit HaMikdash, it gets destroyed. And in order for us to bring him close again, we want it to be out of love, but first it has to happen out of fear. Va'al pi zeh bi'arnu ha'inyan, lama lo nizkuru inyanim elu b'chol dalar humashim ad כה? How come the last 4 books that we just read all year long, we didn't talk about love for God? Ki rak achar kiyum kol hamitzvot na'asim re'uyim u'muchsharim l'kayim mitzvot elu kehilchatan. That it's only after you learn how to condition yourself, how to grow, how to go through a state of adolescence and be disciplined, learning from your mistakes, and really understanding fear of not wanting to fail, then and only then can you be in a state where you're actually motivated. So we ask the question, why do we open up with the first passage that we read last week of Dvarim, where Moshe Rabbeinu berates us, and he says, here are all the things that Moshe recounted that happened to us. He reminds him of all the bad things that you did in your life. Why didn't we just start this book with Va'et Hanan, with love, about love and the closeness to God? And he tries to point out, and I think there's a great analogy. I just happened to go on a diet myself. I've lost 25 pounds. But it took many, many years of going to my doctor and him looking at my blood count and telling me, listen, the cholesterol's going up. You're unhealthy. You're overweight. You're getting obese. Don't come to me and tell me that your knees are hurting, that your feet are hurting, that your back is hurting, that you're wheezing going up a flight of stairs. Look at yourself in the mirror. You are not taking care of yourself. Your parents, when you were a child, tried to teach you to eat right. They didn't want you to snack on candy all the time and salty foods. And you just don't know how to listen. And you all of a sudden wake up and on your own come to this realization that you have to get yourself into a conditioned mode. And then it's painful. And you start exercising. And you start cutting down on what you eat. And it's not easy. But then you get yourself in like this cruising altitude. You get your second wind. And you begin to start loving the way you look. And you begin to start loving the way you feel. But it's only after you gave yourself a good guilt trip and you gave yourself a good talking to, or someone opened your eyes up to where you are deficient, only then can you begin to start really enjoying and really reveling in the discipline and the framework that you just put yourself in and being proud of yourself. And when you do that, then you find this adoration, you find this love for where you're at. And that is the power of this week's Parsha of Hashana. Kodesh Baruch Hu, last week, Moshe Rabbeinu said to us, guys, look where you've been. Look how far we've come. You're now about to go over the Jordan River. You're supposed to take over Eretz Canaan, the land of Israel, and you're supposed to conquer it. You're going to go to battle now. You have to uproot those things that are going to ultimately hold you back, make the land pure, and take it over and do the mitzvot. and become davuk, close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's such a powerful concept that we are being asked to do now that we get into Va'et Hanan and Parshat Nachamu. It's now time to return. And in the upcoming weeks, I'm going to point out to you that every single Parsha talks about battle, talks about conditioning, talks about overcoming, talks about cleaning up your ways, so that by the time we get to Rosh Hashanah, we're going to be in a very, very good place. And we're going to be able to stand before HaKadosh Baruch Hu and ask for Rachamim, and ask and tap his emotional connection to us and ask us for a good year. People, we are not out of the woods. God is talking to us. The Delta virus, the Delta strain is out there. The markets are teetering. The money is running out. We're not out of the woods. We need to be reminded of what we've been through over the past year and a half, and we need to wake up. And we have an opportunity, and we're going to do it. Have a good Shabbos.